forth. And Ben is not confirmed, so I don't think he's joining. Okay, go live.
It's not letting me go live on LinkedIn.
We're live right now.
We are live though. All right. Hey everybody, John Spielman here, GAI Insights for the Gen AI news briefing. We're having some streaming issues here this morning. Hope to see you here on YouTube and other places. We've got Luda Kopakina, Adam Rappaport, Ankaj Honda, and Paul Beyer. And we're going to be looking at a number of articles today. And if you want to follow along, please go ahead and go to gaiinsights.com/articles. And we've got kind of a busy news day today. All right. So at the beginning of this thing, Ankaj, if you could kick us off with the first article, please.
Sure, John. Can you please bring up my screen?
Bring up your screen. Yes, sorry. Oh,
I got it.
there we are.
Okay, so the first one that we have for today comes from Foundation Capital, and they had published something a year back, which they called Services as a Software Opportunity, and now they are sharing lessons with us from year one of that publication.
Yeah, I was going to take this particular one. I was between important and essential in this one. I think, as they note, is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity in terms of the use, basically automating the professional class, if you will. And they say some things which are, I think, important, somewhat obvious, in the sense of if you scroll down, for example, just above that number one there, Ankaj, where they show the iceberg. Where the features in UI, no, if you scroll up, there we go. Features in UI on the top, and then, integration with workflows, and then tuning the model and running it and so forth. Kind of intuitive, but, they're talking about that, which I think is important. This notion of really having the language models embedded in customer systems, because knowledge is very specific. It's going to be a differentiation and a competitive mode, if you will, the ability to execute inside. And then, there's some interesting stuff in here about pricing, which is pretty dynamic right now, whether it's a usage-based pricing or reserve-based pricing or an outcome-based pricing. Of course, the cloud providers want to have outcome-based pricing. I think that the consumers of this, the banks, the insurance companies, and so forth, would prefer that the creators of, that the cloudalists, the cloud folks, actually absorb more of that. But I think an important dimension. So I don't know. I was kind of definitely important for me, maybe essential. What do you think here, Adam?
I was squarely in the important camp. I mean, actually, frankly, I'm ambivalent between optional and essential. Really, I was hitting both of them. What I think leaves it important for me is the concept of that implementation is the product, which I thought was really, really interesting here. That people are starting to expect that you're not going to just talk to them about something and give it to them, but the way they get the value is through that deployment to production that actually delivers the value. Yes. And the concept of collapsing pre and post sales, particularly in my own organization, it's something I really need to have a second thought about in terms of the relationship between vendors and customers. So definitely a few things worth it in there. I wouldn't be telling anyone to run out and read it immediately, though.
All right, so we got a definitely important, maybe optional. What do you think here, Paul?
I'm on hyper optional. I didn't find anything of use in here. This is what's old is new. Forward deploy engineers or consulting engineers, and so I didn't find anything. Of course, that could help.
See, Paul, that idea of the forward deployment engineer, though, sounded like John's concept of the bitsmith, like the people who are out in the business working with the people. And actually understanding what can be built to optimize and streamline their workflows on a day-to-day. So I actually did catch some interesting value out of that, but maybe I'm misunderstanding.
How's that different than a pre-sales engineer?
Paul,
we're talking about internally in an organization. It's part of an organizational structure to have people that are forward deployed within your organization, helping their coworkers get the value out of implementing these things day-to-day in their work. So maybe I misunderstood it, though. Yeah.
I was totally essential on this one. for these messages that Adam highlighted. So it is now not the features of the product, but the depth of the integration with the data. It applies internally and to external vendors. That's very critical. The capabilities, so you no longer can say, this is a POC, let's try it. It's the results that matter. So, and it's the speed to value. We've always said that, but now it's really becoming a metric, right? And so it's a shift. It's a shift because previously the LLMs and without agents, we couldn't really deliver as much as it required quite a bit of engineering. Now it's less engineering required to deliver the speed to value. So that I think there are, for these couple of really critical messages, I think it's essential.
But how's that different than a database? I mean, a database, you can't do anything until you put value around it. I mean, this is just raw intelligence. So,
no, Paul, I disagree. It requires quite a bit of engineering internally of how to. It's not just like look up a database, or an entry in the database. It requires at each step. It's almost like putting the intelligence of the specific industry, a specific process, a specific something in that workflow. So it's very different in my view. I agree with Vivek. It's
all right, John, I'm way outnumbered here. Grab the chalk.
There you go, baby. Yeah, I think I'm gonna lay that important in this one. There's, we're gonna average things out. The thing, Paul, I think that's different about a database is, to me, a database is very well defined in terms of if you're to talk about databases, for me, if you're to talk about databases back in the 50s and 60s, when Date was writing his book about databases, and the first databases were being conceived, and IBM was doing DB2 and all that stuff. Yeah, maybe, because then it was much more fluid. Kind of, where's the data sit? What functionality do we want in the database? We're early days here, right? This is, to me, we're at the point of designing the semantic operating system, and what I mean by that is that the functions and the modules and so forth aren't that clear to me. I mean, there's a few that like RAG database, but even those, where which function sits, how it integrates. To me, it's all very fluid. So that's how I would say it's different in terms of the way that they're deploying. Sure, you put systems engineers together with software programmers. What a concept, right? I mean, IBM invented that, and GE, God love them, when they're back in the computer business, back in the 60s. So I agree with you. That stuff's not different. Anyway, all right.
Ashish is arguing that exactly your point, that at the enterprise level, you need to build knowledge around the capability into the software and equip it with the right capabilities. So I don't know whether Ashish is voting important or essential, but yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, but Ashish said it so much more eloquently and succinctly.
Oh, thank you.
All right. All right, next.
Okay, the next one that we have for today comes from Sakana AI and talks about Request, their approach to deploy multi-model teams that outperform individual LLMs by 30%.
Didn't we review this before?
Yeah.
I think this is a do-over in terms of things. Anyway, let's see. On this bad boy, we had Luda. What do you think?
Yeah, we reviewed another article and another advancement from Sakana. So they're going on steroids, I think, in this space. So TreeQuest is a free tool that they're releasing, and that's the news really. And it actually combines the very deep chain of reasoning with RL, so it's faster, and then selects the model that is best at runtime. So it checks which models perform best for certain tasks, and it selects, it does this combination of the three things, and outperforms the model if the model worked alone by 30%. So this, I think, is I don't know whether everybody will drive to work on TreeQuest, but I think it is an important piece of news, an important advancement. Can be rated as optional, but I thought it's worth highlighting.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Paul and I over the weekend were working on some analysis for a client who is building what may be the world's largest data center. One of the things we're talking about is token demand. And the thing that I think is so interesting is when you have these meta, interrogations of these big models, you're going to drive token usage through the roof, as you get, different. I just think intelligence, the quest for superior intelligence is going to be so great that we're going to just continue to. I think I'm super bullish on demand for silicon intelligence. I think it's going to grow way faster than people are estimating. What do you think here, Adam?
Yeah, I like the way they're stitching it together. I see it as an evolution and sort of approaching what we expect to see in GPT-5, right? In terms of an integrated model that really has the intelligence to understand when it's best to use the additional compute time effectively to think more deeply, or to chain your thoughts, or split it up into smaller parts, or check your work more. And a lot of what they're proposing here, though, is things that can be done already. They're just packaging it up. So it's valuable. It's helpful. I think it's probably optional. It feels more like a research to me. But again, I think this is very much what we'll see just at the core of what OpenAI is bringing with the next model anyway, something very similar to this. So it was optional for me.
So Brenda's going for essentially, Luda?
She's going an essential on the prior article.
Oh, prior article. Okay.
Yeah. She just said the dialogue, the fact that we highlighted all these issues made her want to read it. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to save that so I can just use it anytime I want. This is essential. No.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's optional, essential, optional, important for me, as I said.
All right. She's just saying I'm not going to worry about tokens in the future. Interesting. All right, Paul, we're going for important on this, optional on this one. What do you think?
Optional. I agree with Adam.
All righty. We're going to pick up the pace a little bit. We're 2 in. We got halfway through here. All right. Next, Akash.
Okay, the next one comes from Jukan Choi, and it talks about the operational risks and liquidity management of GPU clouds.
Yeah, very interesting. We had a semi-analysis thing that we'd gone over before that looked at the relationship between Oracle and some of the new capabilities. This is a critique of that financial analysis. What do you think here, Adam?
I thought this was a far better article than in hindsight to the one about Oracle. He does a phenomenal job of highlighting a lot of really good and interesting points. I'm not sure how important it would be to an AI leader specifically. Possibly something they could consider giving to like a CFO or a COO. Potentially even essential to make sure that they pass this along. It's really, really fascinating. He takes the concept of financial risk modeling and really applies that to GPU leasing and looks at this whole new way of really considering elastic compute and the strategic and defensive advantage of being very agile and being able to move based on market demand and your own needs, and really calls out the semi-analysis article on Oracle for oversimplifying a lot of things. So it's a great piece. I was surprised when I first went to it. I was like, oh, is this going to be like a Twitter thread? And it's just a massive. It's actually a translation of a Chinese piece, but a super, super fascinating read. I'd probably say at least important, potentially essential for the leaders to pass along to COO and CFO levels.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, this is the kind of stuff when I was at Harvard Business School, we used to teach around, like in a more advanced finance course, where you're looking at what are the economics of the counterparty. Like if you're a large corporate, right, you want to understand the economics of the counterparty when you're going in and doing any kind of contracting or negotiation or anything. And this is really well done. And I think you can feel the experience of the person writing this in terms of things like, catching simple problems that like 100% capacity utilization, which never happens, things like that. Anyway, what do you think here, Paul?
A very interesting article. Agree with all the commentary. I think for the AI leader, this is optional. I think this is a meta industry hyperscaler essential article, but for AI leader, optional.
Luda, where are you on this?
Optional.
Okay.
It's an interesting. It's about compute. It's about. Adam is right. There's a lot of financial side of how do you think about this and how do you compute it, but it's not as relevant, I don't think, yet.
Ankaj, where are you on this one?
Really interesting article, John, but I'm with Paul on this, maybe optional for the AI leader.
Yeah, I'm almost talking myself into important just because if you're a big buyer of these things, you should understand your supplier's economics. But we'll go optional. Okay, next. Ankaj.
Like what? John, you said your opinion went to the Democratic census. You okay? This your birth year. John had a birthday last week. So
it's just, we know from psychology that random rewards are the most powerful. So I'm just trying to train the beast here. Okay, next.
Okay, the next one that we have is a research paper which talks about strategic intelligence in large language models, and they have evidence from evolutionary game theory.
Yeah, it's interesting here, and I just gave it a once over lightly, but this to me, it shows that the models do a good job on prisoner's dilemma, and very different tactics and strategies. You may remember we had a thing the other day about how the models don't do a good job on the problem of putting planning for the movement of circles on a stack of. I'm trying to stack. What's the word I'm looking for? It's a typical robotics thing where you're moving a stack of circles that are gradated from one place to another. That kind of planning of the physical movement of stuff. And that was the article that said AI can't do simple reasoning. This to me seems the counterbalance to that, where you have it doing pretty good strategic reasoning in the context of a game theoretic context. And so anyway, the Hanoi Tower is the problem that it was having a problem with. And anyway, this still for me was optional, but interesting in the sense of the idea of how well these models can reason in a general context, I think is greater than a lot of people think. And every once in a while, we're going to find certain kinds of problems it's not good at. But I found this pretty impressive, but it's still optional for our AI leader. What do you think, Adam? Tower of Hanoi. Thank you, Ashish.
Yeah, I'm optional as well. I think if nothing else, people could, if they wanted to, just read in the little summary on the abstract there, where it sort of characterizes the way the different models behave, because they didn't all behave the same, and talks about how Gemini proved strategically ruthless, whereas OpenAI's models remain cooperative, which ended up being a catastrophic choice in hostile environments, and Claude was the most forgiving reciprocator. Like, it's an interesting reflection of their behaviors, but it is just some sort of edge research and probably optional news.
All right, Luda.
Yeah, optional, but that particular bit was very interesting, and it's I think it is deliberate, right? So people were training. Claude certainly was training for emotional balance, for balanced response, and we know that from other articles. And now it shows in this long chain of reasoning and strategic projection. It's very interesting. I think I was kind of in between optional and important, because I think for the AI leader, even though they can't really use this, but it's a demonstration that it's not just the pattern recognition behind. It's a serious. Models can reason and can actually demonstrate certain traits, emotional and whatnot, and strategic traits. So it's an important message.
Alrighty, well, we're going to pick up the pace a little here, Paul. Optional?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I do want to highlight both what Luda and Adam saying that these models have personalities, morality, viewpoints. So we talk about they are not mechanistic 100%. So we talk about having the AI leader ensuring AI switchability, but switchability does come at a cost. And I think particularly as these AI leaders move towards more emotional management of customer service applications, this is important thing for them to keep in the back of their mind. But optional for the article, but important trend that Luda and Adam highlighted.
Yes, and as I know, confidentially, one of the big models has just moved in this direction, right, to try to be the most emotionally one of the up and comers, not the top tier, but next tier down in terms of large language models. Ankash, we're going optional. You okay with that?
Optional, John.
All right. DeepSeek debrief. Next.
Oh, yes. So this article from Semi-Analysis talks about DeepSeek 128 days later after the release of the first model.
All right, Adam, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll be brief with the debrief here. It's I was going to say optional. I might say important because it is well written and it has a lot of interesting things in it, but none of them certainly which are essential. It talks about basically what's happened in the 120 plus days since DeepSeek first came out, and there was the huge financial, the stock market reaction and everything, and what's really happened from it. OpenAI, their state-of-the-art top-end model, they've had an 80% price reduction, and they had attributed to that. But interestingly enough, after that initial excitement, people have been using the actual DeepSeek models less and less, and third-party sites like OpenRouter that host DeepSeek actually have seen tremendous 20x increase in usage. So it says some interesting things about usage behavior and who people trust and how they are willing to use these models. But generally, I'd probably be between optional and important.
All right. We're on the fence here. Optional, important. What do you think here, Luda?
I actually think that for people who are still experimenting and wanting to understand whether they should or shouldn't include DeepSeek in their cadre of models, this is important. This kind of gives you the lay of the land. So I would give it an important.
Paul?
Hands down important. We just saw the article last week from Wall Street Journal talking about the international markets and how multiple companies chose DeepSeek, not hosted by China, but DeepSeek in their hyperscaler over Llama 3. So we're seeing the Chinese open source models be preferred by some out there. We're seeing Zuckerberg spend billions or millions on people to improve Llama 3. And DeepSeek certainly, I think their retail site is down. But certainly from a Chinese open source model presence are absolutely something that we need to monitor. So important in my view.
All right, Akash, headed for important. You okay?
Yes, John, important for me. And the most interesting point, I think Adam mentioned this, where DeepSeek model from the provider itself is not seeing a lot of adoption, but from other sort of vendors which provide compute or which provide models as a service. So basically, they are providing better latency and better cost considerations to enterprises. So that's why. So this goes to the fact that even if you are providing a model, there can be optimizations on top of that, and you can be behind other vendors if you don't sort of do a good job at maintaining it in the later stages.
All right, from SaaS to mass, right? Models as a service. Next and last.
Okay, the last one is a case study which comes from AWS, and it talks about how Swisscom has built a network assistant using Amazon Bedrock.
All right, Luda, what do you think? Our friends in Switzerland here.
Yes, I rated it as important. I think it has all the components. It outlined the problem where analysts and telecom, as you know, is a very deep data domain, where analysts spend a lot of time navigating data banks, trying to analyze what's happening with the network. And this case essentially tries to automate all of that grudgy work, saving analysts about 200 hours per year. Doesn't sound quite a lot, but it is a lot as a beginning step, right? And it shows the architecture. There's nothing really earth-shattering, but they go through the what they've learned in the implementation, and they also go through how they evolved this implementation, which might be very useful to the folks out there who are implementing a similar thing. So I rated it important.
All righty, good solid case study engineering here. What do you think, Adam? You good with important?
Yeah, I'll actually. This is a nice segue. I'll take this opportunity. I think it's a great use case. It is just in Amazon, and it is a use case, but it does a really good job of demonstrating how you take something from a concept to production, and then after production, how you continue to iterate, which is exactly what I'm presenting on at the Learning Lab tomorrow. So, or this evening, I guess. So I thought I would use that as an opportunity to plug for that as well. What time is that, Paul? Is it a 7 p.m.?
7 Eastern, 4 Pacific U.S. time, or early AM your time in Australia.
So I'm going to be covering how to begin your enterprise AI journey and sharing a presentation I've been touring around Australia and doing on stage over the last few months. So come on down and check it out.
There we go. Going from off Broadway to Broadway. All right. Paul, you okay with important on this one, Ankash?
Important, and I want to highlight that at least we're back to AWS having decent case studies. We had 3 or 4 duds from these guys in the last few weeks.
All right. Ankash, you okay with important?
Misses there. That's right.
Yes, John.
All righty, great. If you give us a top board, Paul, anything else to add to Adam's pitch?
No, here in the States, we took off. July 4th was a Friday, so a lot of us here in the States had a 3-day weekend, but it's just a reminder. I unplugged, but boy, this AI stuff is moving and it's not slowing down. So we got to continue to help our AI leaders stay current because it's really moving.
Yeah, I mean, one of the wilder things, the Musk going and buying a power plant overseas is going to bring it to the U.S. I mean, yeah, like you do, right? Whatever. Okay, so we have 3 importance, 3 optionals, mostly around services and software, DeepSeek, and then a beautiful little case study from Amazon. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care. Have a great AI day. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.